decorated Army colonel, the remains of a fallen soldier, and a flight he was denied. What followed stirred the entire nation. The airport was crowded, families hauling wheeled luggage, business travelers absorbed in their phones, kids racing ahead of tired parents, the usual rush. Colonel David Carter stepped inside, the sharp sound of his polished shoes echoing against the tiled floor. He had been through this process countless times before, but today was not like the others. The weight he carried was not just from the medals and decorations on his chest. It was from the casket on the runway, wrapped in the American flag. Private First Class Jason Reynolds, 21. Taken too soon. Colonel Carter straightened his cap and drew in a long breath. He had a mission, one that was more than just military duty or protocol. It was about a vow made to every soldier who never made it home. No one gets left behind. He walked up to the airline desk, placing his military documents and ID down. The woman at the counter barely glanced up at first. She typed quickly, then paused, brows tightening. "Sir, may I see that again?" she asked, her voice strained. Carter handed the papers back, watching closely. There it was, the hesitation. A quick glance to her coworker. A subtle shift in how she stood. Something had changed, and she was not ready for it. She leaned over, whispering to another agent. He looked at Carter, but gave nothing away. The pause dragged on. Carter knew this tension, had felt it in other forms, but it never got easier. When the woman returned, her smile was tight and uneasy. "I'm sorry, sir. There's a problem with your ticket. We cannot allow you to board right now." Carter exhaled with control. He had handled hostile territories, high-level negotiations, and political red tape. But this felt entirely different. "I am accompanying a fallen soldier's remains," he said steadily, tapping the documents. "Everything is in order." She still would not meet his gaze. "I understand, sir, but there is a security protocol in place. We are not authorized to bypass it." His voice stayed level. "Security protocol?" "Yes, sir," she replied, pushing out another weak smile. "It is just company policy." He did not move, did not blink. "Policy? What policy?" The line behind him grew longer. People shuffled, whispered. He could feel the weight of their attention now. But rather than stepping aside, Carter stood, taller. He was not going to leave without answers. The airline staff remained firm. No one was budging. The tension at the counter thickened. Passengers behind him began to quiet, drawn to the scene. A soldier in full dress uniform being denied boarding. It was not something people saw often. Carter stayed composed, his voice calm. "Ma'am, I need to understand what the problem is. This is an official military task, not a personal matter." "My documentation is complete and valid." Again she hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward a group of staff near the back, quietly conferring. Then a supervisor stepped forward, a man in his 50s, weary expression, adjusting his name badge before crossing his arms. "Sir, I am sorry for the inconvenience." He began with the kind of polished tone people use when they want you to stop asking questions. "But we do have regulations in place, and unfortunately, we cannot bypass them at the moment." That phrase again, policies. Carter drew a slow breath through his nose. He had seen situations like this before, just in different forms. "I have flown with military escorts before," he said, keeping his irritation locked beneath years of training. "I know how this process works, and I know there is no policy that prevents me from boarding. So let us be direct. What is the real reason I am being stopped?" The supervisor cleared his throat and shifted slightly. "It is just an extra security step. Nothing personal, sir. Nothing personal." That was something. Carter clenched his jaw but stayed composed. He had stood in too many rooms where people used vague excuses to avoid saying what they really meant. They were waiting for him to react, to raise his voice, just enough to call security. He would not give them that opportunity. People in line were noticing. A woman in a red blazer leaned in and said something quietly to her husband. A younger man holding his ticket frowned, glancing at the airline staff like he was trying to piece it together. Then a voice broke through the rising attention. "Sir, are you saying there is a problem with his military clearance?" Carter slightly turned his head. The speaker was a few people back in the line, older, maybe mid-60s, face marked by time, wearing a USMC cap pulled low. A Marine, a veteran. The supervisor appeared uneasy. "No, sir. This has nothing to do with clearance. We are just following the usual procedures." The Marine gave a short breath through his nose. "Yeah? I have been through airport security more times than I can count, and I have never seen procedure stop a soldier from accompanying one of our own home." He crossed his arms. "So what is really going on?" The murmuring grew louder. People began pulling out phones. The change in atmosphere was obvious now. Even the staff behind the counter could sense it. The woman who had first turned Carter away looked toward her supervisor, clearly unsure of what to do next. The supervisor exhaled and rubbed the side of his head, the pressure of the moment catching up. He looked back at Carter, now understanding the weight of what was unfolding. "Let me check something," he mumbled before turning and walking away. The woman at the counter kept her eyes fixed on her screen, suddenly absorbed in her computer. Carter stood his ground, posture firm, gaze forward. He was not stepping aside. And this situation was no longer just about him. The quiet in the terminal had turned focused, intense. Passengers were no longer just passing time. They were paying attention, recording. The Marine who had spoken earlier was not the only one showing concern. A woman in a denim jacket, holding her purse tightly, shook her head and whispered to her husband, "This is wrong. He is in uniform." A younger man in a hoodie pulled out his phone, typing quickly. His fingers were moving fast. People were noticing. And for the airline, that kind of attention could become a problem. Carter kept his expression neutral, but inside he was registering every move. The supervisor had not returned yet, which meant one of two things. He was either searching for something to say or hoping the moment would pass, but it would not. Then a voice came from behind him. "Excuse me, sir?" Carter slightly turned his head. A young woman, likely no older than 25, stood just a few feet away. She held her phone in hand, her expression unsure but steady. I do not want to interrupt, but I just want to make sure I am hearing this right. They are not letting you board?" Her voice was soft, but the way she spoke, clear and intentional, drew even more attention from those nearby. Carter let out a breath and glanced at the airline agent. "That is correct." The woman blinked, as if she had expected him to say something else. She paused, nodded once, then turned her phone screen toward him. "I am live right now," she said. "People should see this." And that moment changed. Everything. A man nearby lifted his phone. "This is not right," he said, shaking his head. "This man is literally bringing home a fallen soldier." A woman further back in line raised her voice. "Hey, excuse me?" she called out, waving toward the counter. "Can someone explain why he is not being allowed to fly?" Some people shifted nervously, unsure if they should say something, but the feeling in the terminal had clearly shifted. What had started as quiet conversation had become something more, something the airline staff could no longer dismiss. The agent at the Escorting desk looked like she wished she could disappear. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, eyes darting to the phones now aimed directly at her. Then the Marine from earlier stepped forward again. He was finished being quiet. "I have seen plenty in my life," he said, his tone calm but firm, "but I never thought I would witness a day where an American soldier, especially one carrying a fallen comrade, would be treated like this." The terminal fell nearly silent. Even the usual airport announcements in the background felt distant, muffled. The only sound left was the quiet clicks and beeps of phones recording every second. The Marine squared his stance. "This is shameful." The agent swallowed hard. Her fingers shook as she clicked on the keyboard again. The supervisor still had not returned. Passengers whispered among themselves. A baby cried softly in a stroller, but the mother did not move. To soothe the child, she was looking at her phone, scrolling with a disturbed look on her face. Then someone near the back said under his breath, "It is already trending." Carter did not move. He did not need to. The eyes of the public were now on this moment. Tension hung in the air. The supervisor had yet to reappear. The staff at the desk looked stuck in a frozen silence. Phones were still up, recording, posting, streaming. And then, like a spark on dry leaves, it caught. The young man in the hoodie, still fixed on his screen, gave a low whistle. "Wow. This is everywhere now." Carter stayed still. He knew better than to react too quickly. But he could see it in the way the agent behind the desk stiffened. She realized it too. The woman in the denim jacket checked her phone again and let out a quiet gasp. "Oh my God," she whispered to her husband. "It is already on Facebook." The older Marine gave a grunt and pulled out his phone. They really do not know what kind of mess they have created. Then, right on cue, the airport speaker system crackled. "Attention passengers, due to unexpected circumstances, Flight 237 to Phoenix will be delayed. We apologize for any inconvenience." A few groans passed through the crowd, but most people were not reacting to the delay. Their attention stayed fixed on the soldier in uniform being told he could not board, even while fulfilling his duty. A minute later, a young woman by the windows let out a sharp breath. "He's on Twitter," she said, turning her phone for others to see. People leaned in. A tweet, written in bold capital letters, read, "They just denied a black U.S. Army colonel his flight while he was escorting a fallen soldier's remains. This is how we treat our heroes. Let him fly." Below it, the numbers were rising. Retweets, comments, likes. It was spreading fast. Then another tweet appeared, this one from a veterans advocacy group. "We are aware of the shameful incident happening at airport name. Our soldiers deserve better. Action is coming." People murmured among themselves as the truth sank in. The airline was no longer in control. The agent behind the desk, still frozen, let out a shaky breath. She turned and rushed into the back, disappearing behind a frosted glass door. She was not returning with an explanation. She was going to manage the damage. Carter adjusted his hat. He had been in moments like this before, not in an airport. Not quite like this, but in places where those in charge suddenly understood they had made the wrong mistake with the wrong person. But Carter was not proud, and he was not celebrating. Because this was never about him. It was about Private First Class Jason Reynolds, the young soldier who still had not made it home. That mission was not finished yet. Now the crowd was not just watching. They were waiting. The atmosphere had changed. It felt tense, pressured. Finally, the supervisor returned, but he was not alone. Another man walked beside him. He wore a sharp navy suit, his airline ID clipped neatly at his chest. His steps were fast, controlled, like someone used to dealing with crises. He stopped just in front of the counter, eyes scanning the area. He looked from Carter to the Marine, to the lines of phones still recording. Then he cleared his throat. "Colonel, I apologize for the confusion. It appears there was a system error, but we are working quickly to correct it and get you on your flight." System error. Carter had been in the military long enough to understand what that word meant. It meant, we got caught. It meant, fix this before it gets worse. He did not answer right away. Instead, he let the moment sit in the silence, watching the airline representative shift under the weight of it. "I see," Carter said at last, his tone steady. "You are calling it an error?" "Yes, sir. A mistake, and we deeply regret it. Please know it was never done on purpose." Some people in the crowd scoffed. The Marine shook his head. The airline rep loosened his tie slightly, clearly uneasy. "We would like to personally walk you to your gate now, Colonel. You will be seated in first class, of course. First class," as if that made it better. Carter looked past him, back toward the counter where the agent still stood, avoiding his eyes. The same one who had given him a stiff smile while refusing his boarding. The one who had not even tried to check before. Saying no, Carter breathed out slowly. "I do recognize the urgency," he said, "but I need to be clear about something." The rep nodded right away. "Of course." Carter's tone stayed firm. If no one had recorded this, if no one had spoken up, would I still be standing here? There was a brief pause. The rep swallowed. "Sir, You do not need to answer," Carter interrupted. He already knew. Everyone in the terminal knew. Another quiet moment passed. Then a woman in the crowd quietly said, "He's right." The rep tried once more to ease the tension. "Sir, we truly apologize." "This is not about an apology," Carter replied. "It is about accountability." The crowd murmured in agreement. Now it was not just anger, it was disappointment. The rep realized he was losing control. He straightened his back, trying to appear more in charge. "Colonel, let us get you on your flight right now." But before Carter could say anything, another voice broke in. "Sir," said a younger man wearing an airport security uniform. He had stepped beside the counter, holding out a phone to the airline rep. His face was tense. I think you should see this. The rep looked confused but took the phone and began scrolling. His face turned pale. The Marine crossed his arms. What is it, something wrong? The rep said nothing, but they all knew. The backlash had now moved far beyond the terminal. A major news outlet had picked up the story. The headline was clear. U.S. Army colonel denied flight while escorting fallen soldier. Airline rushes to respond. Below it, a video clip from the terminal played. The rep returned the phone and took a deep breath before turning back to Carter. We deeply regret this incident, he said. His voice was thinner now, less steady. We would like to release a public statement to clarify. The public already knows what happened, Carter said, cutting him off. Silence. The rep pressed his lips together. Carter looked out at the crowd, at the phone still filming. Then he turned to face the rep again. I do not need first class, he said. I do not need special treatment. What I need is respect. And so does the soldier I am escorting. Another quiet reaction spread through the crowd. The rep gave a stiff nod like there was nothing more he could say. Understood, sir. The Marine made a small, approving sound. Carter adjusted his cap. Now let me finish this mission. But the airline's problems were only beginning. They had lost control of the situation. The story was out now, spreading faster than they could react. The terminal no longer felt like a boarding area. It felt like a press briefing. Phones were still filming. People were still watching. Then something unexpected happened. A man in a dark blue suit walked into view. He moved with the posture of someone who held real authority. He was not from the airline. He was not airport security. He was military. The room shifted. People stepped aside instinctively as he came closer. His ID badge flashed briefly as he reached Carter and offered his hand. Colonel, he said clearly. I am Major Thomas Beckett, Department of the Army. We were informed of the situation. Carter shook his hand, grip firm. He did not need to ask how the major got there so fast. The military does not hesitate when it involves its own. Beckett turned to the airline rep. His voice was calm but firm. We are handling this from here. Colonel Carter and the remains of Private First Class Reynolds will not be flying on a commercial airline. The rep blinked. Sir, you were just about to protect your image, Beckett interrupted. His tone was respectful, but it had weight. He looked back at Carter. Sir, the Pentagon has arranged for a private military flight. Your transport is ready. Waiting, a murmur moved through the crowd. People glanced at each other. The U.S. military had stepped in. Carter exhaled, not from relief. He did not need rescuing, but the mission was finally back on track. He gave a small nod. Understood. Major Beckett gave one final look to the airline rep. This will be handled. It was not a warning. It was a commitment. Carter turned toward the Marine, who had been observing everything with quiet approval. Thank you, brother, Carter said. The Marine gave a nod. We take care of our own. Carter looked around one last time at the people who had spoken up, who had not let it slide, who made sure the story was seen. He adjusted his uniform, stood tall, and walked out. Not toward the gate, but toward something larger. But for the airline, the consequences were only beginning. They believed the situation would pass. A few apologies, a press statement, maybe a word from the CEO, just basic damage control. But the public was not ready to move on. News channels covered the story. Veterans groups issued strong statements criticizing the airline. Even lawmakers spoke up, demanding full accountability. Then came the financial impact. By the end of the week, the airline's stock had taken a hit. A boycott hashtag had started trending. Their social media accounts were flooded with angry posts asking for answers. Then came the final blow. A legal case. A group of military advocacy organizations filed a formal lawsuit against the airline, citing discrimination and failure to protect service member rights. Feeling the pressure, the airline's CEO appeared in public. He called it a regrettable misunderstanding and said the staff involved had been placed on leave. But it was too late. Meanwhile, Colonel Carter continued with his duty. He brought Private First Class Jason Reynolds home, standing with the soldier's family as they received him for the final time. Carter did not seek headlines. He did not want the spotlight. He only asked for respect, and that was the real issue. Respect should not be based on outside attention. It should not depend on a viral clip or public anger. It should be the norm. The people in that terminal, the Marine, the passengers who refused to stay quiet, they showed something that mattered. When people unite, injustice has nowhere to hide. If you care about responsibility, if you believe those who serve should be honored, then speak up. Because when you stay silent, things like this can happen again. And next time, it might not get noticed.